o'clock. So this program is being recorded. So we'll go ahead and get started. For all of those that may be joining late, they can come back and catch the beginning. Good morning and happy holidays, everyone. I'm Sean Evans, President and CEO for the Meridian Chamber of Commerce. And it's my pleasure to be your moderator this morning for this leadership panel, Joy to the Workplace. I've had the pleasure of working with all of these panelists in the last year, and you're in store for some great insights this morning. Today, we're bringing together 4 industry experts who are focused on a human-centric approach to corporate culture. Each of them is driven to aid business leaders and create abundance and joy in the workplace. Today, we're creating a space where you can engage directly with these experts to gain insight into tools to reveal your blind spots in your corporate culture, how to develop systems that benefits the growth of your team and your organization, how to execute programs to develop culture and connection in a hybrid workplace, strategies that you can implement today that will ignite joy in your workplace, and how to create a mindset of abundance in all of your workflows. We will invite you to ask questions in the chat. We've also got questions that you submitted during your registration process that we'll bring up. Please keep your microphones muted. If you have any questions specifically for one of our panelists, please let us know who you're directing it to and how, and we can get that panelist to directly answer that question. And now I'd like to introduce you to the panelists. First up is Connie Miller. Connie is the CEO of Credible Advantage, a leadership consulting business that provides consulting to leaders and boards. She's known as a strong Idaho leader who recently transitioned from 25 years in the credit union industry and most recently served as the president and CEO of Icon Credit Union for several years. Connie's received many community awards, including one of Idaho's CEO of Influence. Welcome, Connie.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Next up, we have Marlene Robinson, consultant, trainer, and coach at Black River Performance Management. Marlene has a unique blend of corporate leadership experience paired with an entrepreneurial mindset. Her passion for learning and process improvement has equipped her with keen understanding of how to optimize skill sets inside of organizations. Certified in TTI Success Insights Sciences and John Maxwell Leadership and Public Speaking, she engages deeply with her clients to refine their professional experience and optimize individual capacity. Welcome, Marlene.
Thanks. Happy to be here. Thanks, Sean.
Next up, we have Angie Leone, co-founder of Black River Performance Management. As the 2021 recipient of the Women of Influence in Entrepreneurship, she's a leader in her field and community. Angie has a master's degree in human resource development. She has a background in fitness, healthcare, education, and nonprofits. She's certified in DISC, driving forces, and emotional intelligence. She is passionate about helping people develop stronger personal and professional relationships. Welcome, Angie.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. And finally, Rob Leone, PhD, co-founder of the Black River Performance Management. Rob is a professor of human resource development, where his teaching and research focuses on organizational psychology and behavior. He uses this as a framework to help build sustainable systems and initiatives with his clients. As an experienced business owner and over a decade of work in economic development, Rob draws upon his background in human behavior, opportunity recognition, and relationship development while coaching and advising business owners and executives. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean.
Rob, why don't you get us started today and just start sharing a little bit about how to bring joy to the workplace.
Sure. Well, first off, Sean, thank you very much for doing this. Matthew, who's behind the scenes running this, thank you very much. Just a general reminder to everyone, I know some mics aren't muted, so please, if you wouldn't mind, take a minute and just mute your microphone. We're going to go ahead and start, and I'm going to ask the panelists to all speak up first, as opposed to me, to share their ideas, their experiences of how they have brought joy and abundance to the workplace. So if any of them would like to go first, I'd love for you to share with the group.
Sure, I'll go first. So first of all, I'm so happy to be here with all of you, and just investing in your time to join the session says a lot about you and your care and concern for people you work with. So for me, it has been a variety of things, but I'll touch on just a couple of the most important ones to me. Number one is valuing each individual as a contributor to the core cause of what you're trying to accomplish in business. So, I had from the financial services industry, for example, a lot of tellers, and I used to take them for coffee on their first day and tell them that they were equally important as I was. We just had different responsibilities. And I think it's important to value and find and ask yourself, what are you doing to send that strong message, and not just send a message, but live it and breathe it in your day-to-day work. I think the other thing is have fun, find things that truly take you out of the monotony of the everyday business that you're doing. We used to, for example, take our team camping every year, and it was just a way to bond and have fun and create amazing memories that they talked about all year long.
I'll jump in now.
Marlene.
I love that idea. I wish I had an employer that would have an annual camping trip. That's a great idea. A lot of the clients that I end up working with are in a space of overwhelm and overload and frustration. And so what I often can bring into an environment that I'm working in or that I'm partnering in or consulting in is perspective and recognizing that we're not alone. Often leaders feel very alone. They think they're isolated because they're the only ones that can make the decisions. And so often great leadership is as a result of engagement and collaboration with others in your workforce and in your team. So inviting them into the conversation for solutions and problem solving, and delegating some of the work that you truly don't have to own helps alleviate some of that overwhelm. But, as humans, we all want to feel valued and appreciated and engaged, whether it's in our professional life or our personal life. So if we remember that in the way we approach our colleagues, and we make sure they understand they are appreciated and valued, and we are continually engaging them in the solutions of the organization, it's inherently going to create a more joyful and satisfying work environment.
Thank you, Marlene. So we all know that emotions are contagious. And if you don't know that, I'm telling you right now, they are contagious. There's a thing called emotion contagion. So if you want to see joy, you have to be the joy. And I've known leaders that can set the tone for their entire organization. And so the first question I would ask is, how are you showing up? And how do you spread joy? By being joyful. The other thing I would say is that paying attention to what each person needs as an individual to find connection. Our basic human needs need to be met in the workplace for us to thrive. So you're creating an environment where the people can thrive, and you're getting to know what that person needs. What do they like? What are ways that create engagement for them? So on an individual level, just kind of like when you have children at home, you have to engage different people differently. Same thing, it goes in the workplace. We didn't get a manual on how to approach each of our children or each of our employees, but if you start to engage them as individuals and to find out ways that you can connect with them, regardless of, like Connie said, of what their position or title is, seeing them as a human being with a life outside of the workplace, and then just getting to see what ways you can connect with them. And for me, one of the ways I like to connect with people is humor. Try to find something that they think is funny or silly, or something to bring a smile to their face. I really believe if you can smile more and you can bring a smile to other people's face, that is contagious. And it actually is true. There's some research out there that just playing laughter for comedians, playing it in the audience, humans will start to laugh more just because they mimic other people laughing if they think it's supposed to be funny. So smiling more, laughing more is contagious. So be that joy and you'll see more joy.
So I'm going to pick up where Angie left off. There's this concept called the Duchenne smile, and it's a full engaged ocular smile that people have. And it was discussed many years ago, many decades ago, and it isn't until in the last several decades that they're starting to do research around it. And that is what we find, that is what we feel as inviting to us as people. So it's just not even just that mere option of smiling, because some of us, when we're grumpy, we try to smile, and it's kind of a part smile. It's that engaging ocular expression that, you know, you run into someone in the grocery store you don't know, but they give you that big smile and you immediately feel that warmth. But what I wanted to say is, I think one of the questions that came in advance was, what are the tools or approaches or concepts you could use to help instill joy or abundance in the workplace? And I have a concept. It's not my concept. It's borrowed from some of my previous careers concepts. And it's referred to as the 4 I's. And there's 4 I's that we could keep in mind at the forefront of the conversation concerning our engagement. And actually, these I's tie into the concept of community. And we don't often talk about community in terms of workforce. We talk about relationships, but really, ultimately, I think what we're trying to work towards is establishing a community framework and a community mindset with our people so that they take care of each other, so that they don't just wait on the supervisor or the boss to make those decisions. And so here are your 4 I's, and they are in sequential order. They build upon each other. So the first one is involve. We want to involve our people in the processes, in the decisions. And we've been hearing this forever, right? This helps drive engagement. So let's involve people in the decision-making aspects that they can be a part of. The second I is investment or invested. So what happens is when we start to involve people in the decision-making aspects of our organization, whether it's for an initiative or a large decision, they start to build a level of investment in that decision, in that level of involvement. So what's happening is we start with involvement, and then people incrementally increase to invested. When people are invested in the organization, they start to become influential of others. And this is key. This is where we start to normalize cultures. And with our culture turn initiatives, this is a real focal point for us. But this is also the exact spot when cultures fall apart, is the more negative influential experiences between people pulling away from the organization's direction. So influence is really important, and it could go both ways. It could be a positive influence or it could be a negative influence. And then the last I is that concept of identity. And when people go through these sequences, they're more likely to identify with the organization. They will proudly say, I work for Black River, or I work for Boise State, as opposed to somewhat hiding it. And we see this, we've done research in this, and the concept is endorsement. Whether you're going to endorse your organization, your decisions to endorse your organization has ties to your levels of engagement and your identity with that organization. So, and now let's turn it over to Sean. Sean, do you have any questions coming in? I know some questions came in advance. Would you like to field a question for the group?
Thank you, Rob. And thank you all the panelists for your opening comments. Remember, you can enter a question in the chat and we can try and get to those, but we did have some questions come in through the registrations. And I want to start with this one here. I mean, it's what's on top of everyone's mind. Andrea submitted a question of, how do you exude joy when you're just not feeling it yourself? They're not directed to anybody. So any one of our panelists want to chime in there.
I don't mind that question. I'm sorry, go ahead, Angie.
I was just going to say, one of the things that I used to teach my students in the operating room is fake it till you make it. And that means if you're not feeling it, sometimes you just got to do the smile. That Duchenne smile that Rob was talking about actually will bring your mood up. And thinking of things that bring you joy or what you have gratitude for. Because sometimes motivation and happiness sometimes isn't something that's just there. Sometimes we have to create it, and we have to make ourselves get to this point where, you know, we have to do the action first and then it will come along. So Sometimes fake it till you become it. Somebody said, Jody said on there. Yeah. So eventually, if you show up, dress up, show up, get there and do it, you will absolutely start to be able to do that in front of people and be the person that you want to be. And even if you're not feeling it, sometimes you just have to go out and do it anyways. That's I can say.
Yeah, I agree. I often say, you have to act as if you're the person that you intend to be. And our thoughts truly control our physiological response and our feelings and our behaviors. So when you can control your thoughts and remove yourself from a negative spiral or thought pattern, you are going to have control over the energy and the emotion that you're sharing in your environment. And like Angie was saying, think of the things that bring you gratitude, appreciation. Just thinking of just a few things that you appreciate can elevate your mood and take you out of a lower vibrational space.
I would definitely agree with that. I have 4 kind of go-tos that for me. So there are some days where there's just a whole lot of stress, and we've seen a lot of that the last couple of years, where what you thought the day was going to turn out to be was very different. It can be a variety of surprises or mistakes you've learned about, or all kinds of things. So my 4 go-to are: my first one is find a way to be easily impressed, and I call these my snap out of it thing. So the first one is find a way to be easily impressed in the moment. So if you have someone sitting in front of you, for example, that you may be disappointed in a decision they made, or they didn't follow through with some accountability or all that is, and immediately think about what is something about this person or this situation that I can be easily impressed with. And that gets you to slowly to and quickly, actually slow process, but quick emotion to a good place. The second thing is identify what you're learning in the moment. So some of my favorite and best things I've learned as a leader were during difficult times. So if you stop and say, what am I learning? It could be everything from how to listen better, it could be time management, it could be controlling emotions, but what is it in this moment that I am learning, either about myself or the other person? And Angie and Marlene both mentioned this, but I have a gratitude journal. I have it at my desk. When you have tough times, stop and think about something you can write that you're you have a lot of gratitude towards. And sometimes it would be, thank you for the opportunity to even just have this position. There's a lot of people in the world that would do anything to have my position. And sometimes it's other things like, thank you for even gifting me this opportunity. And then my 4th one, which really works for me, is try to get to the world of wonder and curiosity. If this is really good when you have change that hits you, is if this were successful, like someone's bringing you a new idea, for example, if it was successful, I wonder what it would look like. And so really get curious and enter that state of wonder in those moments. And those are my 4 go-to, and they work for me. They keep me grounded nicely, and even during times of stress.
Everyone provided such good answers. So I'm just going to provide a couple other little things I consider when I hear this question. And the fact that you are aware that you're in a mood or you're not feeling it is empowering, in the sense of you now also have control to make a shift. So whether that's a gratitude experience or something else that leads you to make that emotional behavioral shift, that is within your wheelhouse. So when I think about people that are overwhelmed, let's first have that self-recognition that I am overwhelmed. Let's label it as to why I'm overwhelmed. And I've acknowledged that. And maybe I need to put that aside and I'll deal with it. But the thing that comes to mind when I hear this question, if you've ever read or watched any of the videos that relate to the fish philosophy, one of the concepts is choose your attitude. And I just love that because it's a powerful statement that really was tough on me. And I actually had to stick that on my bathroom mirror, choose your attitude. Every morning I'd have to look at that to remember what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and then go on and be in that better mood, that positive energy, because of the very fact of that emotion contagion, because I knew how I entered that workforce or how I entered my office that day. is going to set the tone for everyone else that day.
Okay. Well, thank you, all of our panelists. Great feedback. Next question comes from Virginia. We're in a very competitive marketplace right now. Describe, and this is joy to the workplace, is what we're talking about today. Describe the difference between satisfaction and joy in your work environment.
I think simply put, and the first thing that comes to mind is a performance appraisal, that has that satisfactory measure right in the middle of that performance appraisal. It means you're there, it's good enough, it's getting done, but it doesn't mean it's above expectations. And the difference for me between satisfaction and joy is that a person that has job satisfaction may be internally pleased with the experience, but the concept of joy, similar to the concept of passion, can bubble over and actually be imparted on people around you. It's those magical or those experiences when you see someone that has a lot of passion or energy around their work, it becomes infectious. And that is, in my opinion, what we're leading to, or we're trying to bring our teams to, is to have this level of not just satisfaction, exceeding that level of satisfaction, to have that feeling of joy, and that they all share in it together.
I would add, joy has, sometimes when we hear the word joy, we think of the outward expression and emotion that it might be an extrovert that is extremely happy, but I would also add that joy for me is something you look forward to. So satisfaction is, I think, meeting needs sometimes. And are you doing, as Rob said, is your performance meeting the satisfactory expectations of your employer? But I think joy is, do you look forward to getting up and taking on a new challenge, or being that advocate for your employer?
And I think, Connie, to add to that, I think joy fuels your spirit. You feel like, I'm in the right place, I'm doing the right things, I'm surrounded by the right people. I have a safe environment where I do make mistakes. Sometimes things are hard, but I know the group that I'm working in, they have my back, and I belong.
Let's see, next question comes from David. He submitted this one. It's very appropriate for the times that we're dealing with. How can a culture that invites and encourages teamwork and mutual support not only be maintained, but enhanced in a hybrid workplace? We have a panelist that wants to go first on that.
I'll jump in that. I was thinking about that it is difficult. Sorry, I've got these lights on my face. It is difficult to have like personal connection and engagement virtually. And there are a lot of different strategies I've heard from organizations that they've employed to help create connection with their workforce. But one of the things that I think is so valuable in personal development and professional development is mentoring and being a mentee. So one way you can really create connection is allowing people that opportunity to have a mentoring relationship or a mentee relationship, and encourage one another and inspire one another and really feed into each other's professional and personal development, creating that space where they can connect with each other outside of the typical day-to-day workflow. But also keeping it professionally engaged, I think, is one option. I'm sure a lot of others have great ideas.
One thing that I learned as we went remote quickly is to pause and not start the meeting right away with the technical things to be discussed or the jumping right into initiatives, but actually forcing myself to stop and pause and ask how people are doing and have a conversation about, their weekend, the same things that we did when we were in person. But I tended to see that in our virtual meetings, the same with a phone call, as you get right to business typically. So I had to actually just force myself to pause and lean into that before we started with agendas.
I think it also speaks to what everyone alluded to earlier, that everyone has differences. And so I say everyone has differences there. So we're not super unique in the sense of we don't have overlapping needs. We have tremendous amount of overlap in our needs, but some of us are more introverted and then some of us are more extroverted. And what we need from that organization is different. I need something different. I would be much more along the lines of what Marlene just shared with that mentor-mentee relationship, that one-on-one interaction that's meaningful to me, that will help build or reinforce connection to the organization. For someone that's more extroverted, that could be a different approach, a different framework, even something like Connie mentioned of opening it up to the group to share, your experiences, what you did this weekend, how the holidays went, things like that. That fulfills a certain group's need for connection with each other. And so it's important that we understand what people need. Not that we're going to pander and do very specific, unique things for every different person, but that we understand that just because of how I see the world is not the same as how others see the world, which might be a little bit more accurate as how I feel about my work and what I need in my work is probably a lot more in line with what my other people need. So even honing in on what it is that I'm looking for in terms of connection and connectedness and relationship, even as at this distance, will be key to help elicit that stuff out of your people and to build those relationships. There's no doubt that there's going to be a shift that's occurring here. And we've already seen it. And there's going to be a couple more major shifts that I don't think we're anticipating. But this really speaks to some of the research that we do and this research we read about people and human differences and similarities and needs and behavioral profiles. And those become our tools to start to bridge these gaps that are occurring in this environment. Because, while people are wanting to work more remotely, they also don't exactly understand or know how their behavior is going to follow that. And so we're in this time of experimentation as we try to make sense out of this. And there's no doubt that the market is very much a buyer's market right now for opportunities to move around and to go into new positions. But what does that mean in another year or two when those positions are entirely remote or hybrid and for those organizations? So the answer is not, and I'm kind of leading into a different question that was asked in our early question set about, geez, what do we do with this remote work? How do we manage this? The answer is not necessarily as simple as just create remote work opportunities because that's what people want. People consistently don't understand what they want. They understand what they don't want. But they struggle to identify how they're going to behave in terms of the things that they do want. And so that is going to be a huge challenge for leaders to navigate this space. It's not that everyone just gets to go home or work remotely and call in for these meetings, but how do we manage these dynamics as we work with humans and people and their needs as it relates to organizational performance and business outcomes?
Okay. Just to follow up on that, with so many positions open and recruitment and retention being one of the things that is top of mind of almost everyone in the market, how do I retain a staff and show them that I value them when there's so many things competing for those type of attentions from an employee or for an employee? Connie, you've done a great job over your career building great teams and retaining them. How does that change today?
I think more engagement in as Rob said, is knowing what's important to that individual. So I think definitely be engaged on a personal level. I found, for example, some employees really wanted to have me ping them through Teams or something a few times a day, even if it wasn't work related, just or celebrate small successes. So I think that's it. But I think open discussion and really getting conversations going with the team. And, this requires some trust for them to truly open up sometimes. And so sometimes we have to back up and look at, do we even have trust with the teams? But questions like, what are some factors should we consider as an employer and then I always like to have the two focused on what we're trying to accomplish as an organization, to better serve our members, to ensure that we're, providing great service, whatever it is, and getting their input into this. So, everyone's reading so much right now out there, and, so many articles have either a little bit of a fear base to it, or a trend that we're all wondering, is that really the trend, or is this an slanted article? So I think people are really going to lean into watching the leaders in the organizations, and are they recognizing this big shift, and how are they doing it? But stay focused on what you're trying to accomplish through all of this, because that doesn't change what your business is trying to accomplish. It's just you might have to do it a little differently.
I think relatedness is what we're really talking about, and that's one of the basic human needs too, is just being relatable. And some people need more in the workplace because maybe their home lives don't have as much relatedness as they need. So that's where you have to get to know the individual and find out where they are and meet them where they are. Some people need more. Some people don't want friends at work. It's different for everybody. Finding out, but being relatable with that person and making that person feel like they're part of this family and this bigger picture and this mission and this vision that your company has is going to help. And your organization's reputation has a lot to do with it too. Once you start to get a poor reputation, it starts to feel like there's a hole in the bucket, and you can't fill it. And so keep that in mind. But really, a lot of times people leave because they just don't feel valued or connected with the people. And then the organization often says they tell themselves they left for $1 more an hour, or they left for this, when the reality is they were left because they didn't like the way they were being treated. And so we have to be honest with ourselves too. And sometimes that takes an outsider to look inside the organization, or to do some metrics on exit interviews to find out why they truly are leaving. Sometimes it's middle managers that don't have management training. Many times people get moved up into positions without leadership training, and they were really good at their job, and now they're leading a team and they've had no training for that. And we see that a lot too. And so those people, I think training your middle managers is one of the best things that you can do, giving them leadership skills and how to accomplish leading of teams effectively, so that people feel connected to that boss. Because if you're the top person and you have middle managers and they're not connecting with, let's say, your tellers or your cashiers or your whatever, that is a big gap right there. So getting those middle managers training so that they know how to connect and empathize with those employees.
Sean, can you read that question again? Because there was something in that I wanted to respond to specifically.
Yeah, with so many positions open in the market, how do I retain my staff and then show them I value them?
So Angie likes to call me a pessimist. I prefer to be called a realist. The answer to that is that nothing's changed in terms of how we should be treating our people, right? We've worked too long. And you think about it, the restaurant industry is a great example of that. We've worked too long of taking advantage of low-paid employees to carry organizations, that now they're finally having this point that they're no longer in it anymore. The servers, the waiters, the different people that work in those industries are now leaving, looking for new opportunities. So there's so many things that go through my mind. One of the things that goes through my mind is, think about all the policies that your organization has, all the rules. Why do those exist? Those exist because I think, in my opinion, that we didn't treat people equally and fairly and with authenticity. They exist because people have made mistakes and created problems for the organization. And so what we've done is we've built all these rules as guidelines for organizations and for behavior, without really recognizing that there's a person at the center of every interaction, and every person has a set of needs. And so we need to pay close attention to exactly what everyone has said so far, just as we should have always done. But now it's even more important that we're creating this environment. We're cultivating this environment for people to connect their passions, their interests, their joy with the mission of the work at hand. And the difficult challenge are those middle managers and even senior managers that have to create that scaffolding between the individual's passions and interests and the objectives of the organization. And that takes time, and it takes energy, and it takes skill. But it's not difficult, right? Like it's a big order for us, because for many of us, it flies in the face of how we've traditionally viewed leadership in terms of movies. And even growing up, we saw leaders as hard-nosed, tough, very commanding, and very, if you're a disc fan, very D-oriented. And what we know now is that our leaders of today that are empathetic, that are compassionate, that are authentic, if they are a D, they've adapted and learned how to do this stuff well. But we're actually hiring a lot more people-focused individuals instead of task-focused individuals in leadership ranks, so that we can drive this priority forward of really bringing people into the fold of the solutions.
And I just want to piggyback on what you said right there, Rob, is having good hiring practices, making sure you're bringing the right people into your organization and protecting your culture. Because the people you currently have in your culture and in your business who are thriving and enjoying their job will be taken down pretty hard and fast if you bring someone new into that organization who is contrary to the culture that you have established and created. So employing very strategic and scientifically based hiring practices is going to be key to protecting your culture and satisfaction in your work environment.
I also would say, in addition to the hiring, and certainly there's times where I hired someone that didn't fit the culture, and take a step back and do additional assessments and say, what else could I have asked? But I also think thinking about our existing, what's the culture in our existing environment, and is that new person going to fit with that? Because the other thing is, we get what we tolerate. And so sometimes as leaders, we tolerate I call them cave dwellers, which are those people consistently against virtually everything. And we might tolerate them because they're the top producer, or they've been with the company a long time, or sometimes we tolerate them because they're family. But when we have those types of things in our environment, it's very difficult to create a good culture, because it looks like we are hypocrites in our leadership delivery. So I think what's really also important is really assessing. It hasn't changed because we've had difficulties the last 2 years. We have teams often, some of my clients talk about the difficulty of their teams and having crucial conversations and being able to have trust and honesty with each other. So some of this is just surfaced and become maybe a little more because there's more options out there. But I do think it's important that we don't blame what some of our challenges are today on, for example, COVID. Really do a self-assessment and ask, were some of these problems, maybe we were taking advantage of some of our entry-level people before this hit, and now it's kind of surfacing.
Connie, I got a great question maybe to follow up on that from Ramona here, part of the group. How do you get people to let go of past hurts and be happy in the moment? Tough HR question.
I'll kick in just a little bit, because it's something that I definitely learned as a leader many years ago, and it served me well. And that's that as leaders, we've got to also exhibit that we are vulnerable and we are not perfect, and we're going to make mistakes as well. And asking for feedback and input as to how do I become a better leader, and how do I, help you as well? How do I help our organization? What does our organization need in their leader today? Having great open dialogue questions to be able to surface that is, I used to get so many employees that would share with me one-on-one how much they appreciated that I was willing to be human and not perfect as well. Now, clearly, I didn't make a lot of mistakes. I knew that, I needed to figure it out and show up well most of the time, but there's just going to be decisions you're going to make on occasion where you need to own it and claim it and talk about what you learned. So creating a culture where people can talk about how they're growing from the situation or what they're learning is beautiful if you can get that accomplished.
Basically, what I'm hearing you say, Connie, is it created a psychologically safe environment where they have learner safety, you know, contributor safety, all of these things where they feel like they can talk to you, you're vulnerable, you're open, and you're able to say your faults and also sit with people in the suck. Sometimes they're going through a lot of pain, and sometimes they need to sit there for a while and let them just go through it. We can't really bring people out of it. They have to want to come out of it themselves, but we can be there with them. And I think that's what empathy is just being able to sit there with somebody and saying, I'm sorry you're hurting. And I'm here, you're not alone. If there's anything I can do, you know, I'm here. I think sometimes just that, and instead of trying to snap them out of it, give them their moment, let them be there. Let them have their emotions and let them know they're not alone. That's going to also bring connection and build trust.
So I operationalize this concept when we prepare to hire new executives, new leaders, or we're trying to begin a change initiative that's substantial. And I just call them listening sessions. I have clients that reach out and receive coaching much more along the lines of a counselor type of coaching experience because of the interplay between personal and work experience. And so I guess what I'm saying here is that listening to people share their experiences, whether that's a one-on-one experience with a direct report or someone in a team, or bringing a group together prior to hiring a key position or prior to making a change, bringing the people together that have concerns, that have felt like they've been wronged, that have been hurt, and give them the opportunity to share in the group and open up. It's very similar to a therapeutic experience that you let that out and you start to work through those things. And that's extremely powerful in these environments that we can let them release that. If we go right back to those 4 eyes that I talked about earlier, if we don't, you know, because people are influential in the organization, and just because you're the boss or you're the leader, or you may only have positional power, you might actually not have any real power over the group whatsoever. It might just be in your role. Those people are influential on each other. And if you don't give them time and opportunity to work through those things and for us to package it up and set it aside to move forward, they will carry that forward with them. And because the influences they're influential on each other, they will continue to muddy the water. And if you doubt that, just think about some of those hiring experiences you've been in, where you've had teams that have been maybe not the healthiest teams, or maybe there's some toxicity in the teams, and you just bring in a new CEO, or you bring in a new executive director, you bring in a new president, and you believe that that person's going to right this, that's going to fix this. That doesn't happen often, and it certainly doesn't happen quick. So my recommendation is we develop mechanisms within the system that we prepare people for these shifts. We let them have these opportunities, just like Connie talked about, have these opportunities for them to share their experiences, share their concerns, so that it comes out, we package it up and we put it away. And as a group, we collectively acknowledge that we're moving on and leaving that in the past. And that's been a very powerful experience. And it's really helped position groups to prepare themselves for new leadership or new change initiatives.
And everything that I'm hearing all of you say really boils down to having good leaders who are very emotionally intelligent and available to be able to create a safe space where you can listen without judgment and allow others to share their true feelings and opinions and perspectives requires a high degree of emotional intelligence. And that's one of the things that our tools and scientific tools can help people get better at. Once you understand where you are on the spectrum of emotional intelligence, and then how to improve that skill set, will make you a better leader and give you those skills that allow your organization to be that psychologically safe environment that you have spoken about.
I agree, Marlene. And I think I saw a question come in about how do you find the time to do this? So I will tell you that leaders are busy people. There's always emails to answer. There's always the initiatives you're working on. And I think it is something that we don't recognize enough as leaders, is that we need to carve out time for leadership development. It is one of our initiatives. It's a requirement. So I used to have a lot of opportunities for our team to grow professionally, because leadership is natural to some people, but you're always going to have different personalities, different initiatives, different challenges in your organization. And so to make sure that you are asking yourself, how much time am I working on the business and on my leadership skills rather than in the business? Because as leaders, we got to where we are many times because we were great doers and we had great execution, but we forget sometimes that we need to allow the time. So it's one of the biggest hurdles I hear all the time is, I don't have time to carve out, that time to do that. So I think we have to build that into our culture. And I used to tell my employees that, look, it's my job to help you if I'm asking you to do more than you can accomplish in a day. As long as you are efficient and working hard and have great work ethic, I can be part of that solution, but not unless I know.
Yeah. I hear that from my
You're
clients. Absolutely
right, Connie. Sorry. That question came in from Tracy about how to prioritize making time for joy and not feeling guilty about it. So Angie, any suggestions that you have on that?
Well, I wanted to end that other question here real quick. One of the things when I work with the clients and I tell them is that you don't have time not to right now. I mean, we have to make it a priority, especially with the job market. And so what was the other question? The new one?
Just how do you get past feeling guilty with so much work to be done of spending time on those type of things?
It actually doesn't take that much time to smile at people or to, it may be 30 extra seconds to say hello to somebody, to smile in the morning on the way into the elevator. Some people come into work just so grumpy right off the get-go. Just finding a moment to smile at someone, to connect with them, ask them how their day is. I'm not saying that you need to spend an entire day doing it. Maybe we don't have that kind of time, but we can find moments where we could try to connect with somebody. And maybe you have a weekly list of just certain people you'd like to find something out about, to connect with them. It's a process. It's not a one-day thing. It's over an amount of time, but you're strategic in the way that you're trying to find out how to connect with people, what they like, what their dislikes are, what motivates them, what fuels them. Mm-hmm. And it takes time, but it's like building anything. It's building a team. That's why it's called team building. It's not, if you're not building it, it's decaying. It's like a muscle that you have to use, and you have to continuously flex it and utilize it, or it decays. And that's why you have to make it a practice, and your calendar needs to reflect it.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. So you think about habit change or behavioral change. When we try to, let's say we want a New Year's resolution, we're planning on eating better or hitting the gym more. We're more likely to be successful if we calendar it and carve out that time for it. It's the same thing that goes for the leadership, right? You have your core leader functions or core role functions that I think Connie was referring to, that are so busy and so time consuming. But then you also have that I need to develop myself piece. But then there's the other one is I need to carve out some time for my people, and to be, and for some people, they don't express appreciation very well. So they have to calendar it every Friday. I have people that every Friday they write a thank you card to a different person in an organization, or every morning, every Tuesday and Thursday morning, they have get out of seat and do a round through the floor to see who's around and just connect with a couple people. Like, these are things that we may not do naturally, that we have to learn to do, we have to adapt so that we connect with others. And because it's getting out of our own headspace, it's getting out of the way we want to work. It's helping people feel that they are valued. And so that might mean for someone like myself, who is not naturally inclined to give signs of appreciation or praise, that now means that I have to make a priority to do this for my people. The other thing I would add is the opposite of all of this, and that is removing the barriers. And that's one of the things that I think we really messed up during COVID. We had a gift, we had an opportunity to have a revolution in the workplace on how we conduct our work when we started to go hybrid and then remote. And so we had the opportunity to streamline some of the processes, and some of us have streamlined them and done that really well, but some of us just barely got by, and we've resorted back to the way it used to be. But we need to remove these things that are busy work, that are unnecessary, that are extra layers of bureaucracy that take time. Because for most of us, if we did a survey of everyone in this room, it's the bureaucracy that drives us nuts in our job, right? It's the extra paperwork that really does not seem to be necessary that drives us crazy, that leads us to not enjoy this. And so we can actually minimize some of those pieces. We could do an audit within to determine what is truly necessary. What must be done by paper could also be accomplished through just a conversation. We just need to revisit how we do things to shore up time so that people could have more time to experience a little bit of joy, to have a break, right? You hear this talk about the 5-hour workday or four-day work week. It's a concept, and it's definitely doable because we have so much fluff and extra layers in our organization that don't need to exist. So we can improve on that. And by scaling those things back, we create more space for other initiatives, but also we just make the workload a little bit lighter and more enjoyable for people.
Rob, I would add one additional thing to this whole conversation about investing in our workplace as well, and in our leaders. And that is when we articulate this around, there is an ROI to this as well. So my background is accounting. So, I will go to finance sometimes, and you can really sit down and articulate this around the ROI of investing and why it is worth it. When you add up the number of hours you're interviewing new employees, the number of hours in orientation of new employees, the training, there's just a tremendous amount of investment that we in business do that's more reactive to what's happening. When if we could just control that a little and get better at it, number one, we have more joy in the workplace, and number two, the business model makes sense as well. So a lot of times we hear, well, I'm too busy, I don't have time for that. But how much time are you really spending on all these other things, replacing employees and correcting mistakes of new people that aren't well trained?
Or the resources, the money, not just time, right? Like, you think about it, we can't spend money on training, or we can't invest in training, we can't invest in these initiatives, we can't invest in strategic hiring initiatives. Well, you can't afford not to, right? Because we know, and there's this misnomer out there. People think that just because people are already at the office getting an hourly wage, they could sit in on another meeting and it doesn't cost them anything. Or they could sit in on a selection or a hiring interview and it doesn't cost them anything. And that is absolutely false. That is downtime where that person's not doing generative work that's producing positive outcomes for the organization, being pulled out of that position to go sit in a committee or to sit in a hiring initiative, right? So when we start to talk about ROI, it's really important to acknowledge that just because someone's already there getting paid and showing up at work, doesn't mean that there's not a loss that's occurring when we pull them into training, when we pull them into these other initiatives. So we need to shift our thinking, because we know that the cost for turnover is anywhere on the low end, and this is super low, 30% to over 100% of the wage of that person, the wage and their benefits. That is a cost that the organization accrues when they go through a new hiring cycle, when they start to bring people in for on-site interviews, when they bring them for meals, when they set up presentations. All these things cost money, cost time. If we could build a better cultural capacity in our organization that's positive, with higher levels of psychological safety or support or authenticity, we will lead to higher levels of retention, and thereby being better stewards of our resources. And then we continue, just like anything else, We continue to do preventative maintenance in our organization by investing in development and initiatives to help these people grow and foster new generations of leaders that are coming up the pipeline.
Yeah.
Very well.
So we've got about 5 minutes left in our hour, and I want to give our panelists time to maybe address this one last question, because it was a really unique question that came in from Deanna. Where's the line between obnoxiously joyful and just being yourself? You know, we all see those in the workplace of people that are trying maybe a little too hard. But, you know, is there a line, and how do you address that? Connie?
Well, I think as leaders, we have this responsibility, and you hear a lot about emotional intelligence, which is really a lot of what this is, but we need to meet people. I think this was said earlier, where they are. I think Angie mentioned this. We need to understand what our impact is and our communication style on others. And everyone's different. And I remember having some real introvert personalities on my team that, you know, I would have some trainers that were overly energetic and excited. And you have to balance this out with how you are being received. Now, I'm not saying temper. Enthusiasm, for example, was one of our core culture values. That didn't mean you were outwardly an extrovert. It meant we want you to be enthusiastic about what we're doing. And that shows up a lot of different ways.
Yeah, definitely. You know, meeting people where they are, understanding how they perceive you, like you said, Connie. When you walk into a room, you don't need to be the most energetic and hyper person in the room in order to be perceived as enthusiastic and optimistic. But knowing that you're not overpowering other people with your personality and behavior, and meeting them where they are, knowing how they need to be engaged with, understanding how they appreciate being communicated with is part of that emotional intelligence awareness.
Part of it, I was just going to say, is knowing that language too, and having that framework for talking with your employees about their self-awareness and their regulation, or their social awareness and their social regulation. So when you do that training with your people, they start to have that language, and then they talk to each other about it. They understand, they start to reflect on themselves and their own behaviors and things they like about themselves and things that they want to improve upon. But when they don't have the skill set or the language to talk about it, it's challenging.
The two words that come to mind when I think about this is authenticity and consistency. I don't know anyone else other than myself that talks about the role of consistency among leaders. And that, in my opinion, is one of the most important attributes of a leader, is to be consistent. Because what that does is it teaches your team how to anticipate and predict your behaviors. There's no surprises that way. Even if you're consistently grumpy, they at least know that if they do X, they'll be held accountable. They do Y, they'll receive this sort of response. So I would rather have someone consistent and consistently grumpy than inconsistent and joyful one day and then down the next day. And that's what speaks to authenticity, is who you are and showing up as who you are. And that isn't, you know, we hear some people say, well, this is who I am, take it or leave it. This is me. And that's not what we're talking about. That's kind of an ugliness that some people engender in themselves. What I'm talking about though is just, you know, be your pleasant self and show up, choose your attitude, make a difference for other people, and treat people consistently so that they know how to anticipate and predict what it is you're going to do in any sort of environment. We know people that are obnoxious, joyfully obnoxious, but when they're joyfully obnoxious as their authentic self, and that's how they show up every day, we learn to understand that and appreciate that in them and recognize that as their strength. And so then we assign different assignments and jobs and things for that person to be that way. And so like I said, to me, it comes down to being authentic and being consistent with your people.
And I'll add one thing, it's also sacred ground. Being in charge of people and leading a team is a sacred ground to take really seriously. You impact 8 to 10 hours of their work life. and they get to take that home with them. So keep that in mind. I mean, think about how their work affects them and how they go home to their families. And you have such an impact on their life and the ripple effect, generational impact.
I think we actually have an obligation. This is, and I'm going to run us over by a minute here. I used to think that our life outside of work was what helped keep us going, because sometimes work can be so terrible. And what I've learned and realized over time is that we have this obligation within these organizations where these people are giving their lives for our clients, for our customers, for our causes, as a means to earn a living. And we owe them to help develop lifelong skills and behaviors that are not only going to benefit them in the workplace, but they can take home and that will benefit their relational lives, their friendships, their parenting, these skills that they can learn. Because as Angie mentioned, there's never been a book that came out to say, well, there's parenting books, but there's not a manual that when baby comes out a mother, you get the manual at the same time on how to assemble it and make it work. We can teach people these things that are so essential to being positive, contributing citizens, not only in our organizations, but in our families and our communities. And we can do this, and we should.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank all of our speakers that joined us today and the participants that registered and joined us today and offered some great questions and insights. Rob, Angie, Marlene, Connie, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you to the Meridian Chamber for moderating this event, for giving us this platform and the opportunity to share this knowledge. We do appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
You can contact.
Yep. Go ahead, Sean.
No, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say, we threw some contact information up here. If you have any questions about any of the content, any of our opinions, you want to discuss this further, you want some reading assignments, whatever, however we could help and support you, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to help you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as Rob said, the contact and emails for all the panelists here are on your screen. And a follow-up email for those that registered today will be in your inbox soon with more information and a link to the recorded session today. So thank you all. Go create joy in your workplace and have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.